Hello and what's up, YouTube family? I just wanted to share my testimony of how I became a Christian. So, when I was 12 years old, a somewhat crazy series of events happened. My mom was single at the time, but was talking to someone, dating, and they were getting pretty serious in their relationship. And so basically she moved to another state to be in his area, and I went to school there and tried getting adjusted to a new environment. And part of that was social, and that there was this girl there. She crushed on me really hard, and she made me uncomfortable basically, and I didn't share those feelings of attraction towards her, but I also just didn't handle the situation well. One of the things that happened was we were in a classroom setting, and she was in the same class as me, and the teacher had this game that we played that day. It was called Little Secrets, where we each write some secret down on an index card and put it in this big jar, and everybody takes one out one by one and shares it with the class and says how they would feel, like a practice in empathy. And so I was like the third person to pick out a card, and I swear I recognized her handwriting, and what she said sounded so obvious that it was her. And she said, "I really like someone who goes to this school. I wish people would stop making fun of me." And yeah, someone would probably feel bad about that. But back then I just looked at the teacher and I was like, I'm not going to read this. And so I didn't have to. She confronted me about it. I lashed out. I, called her a mean name. And but then the teacher, once he heard the whole story, he ended up disciplining her instead of me, and I was let free. Well, I could see her the next day visibly crying in front of other girls in that school. And then those same girls, after we all got let out of school and I was walking home, and they were all yelling at me angrily and basically harassing me. And I just didn't know how to handle it, and I felt so miserable. And then I got home one day and I was crying to my mom, and I'm like, I want to go back home. Home was Florida, and I wanted to go back home. And so she let me do that. She bought a plane ticket for me, and I got to go back to Florida. And so there was this church, and there was a youth pastor there with a youth group on Wednesday nights, and I was in middle school at the time, and I wanted to go see him and tell him what happened. And so I did. I spent probably the better part of 10 to 15 minutes after his service telling him what went on, and he was listening, and he was very attentive and empathetic, but he just stayed quiet. And then finally I told him I need help. And so that, for whatever reason, prompted him to take me to the front of the room, where there was a stage and a wooden cross, and he had me kneel down next to him, and he prayed over me. And he basically said a lot of things. I wasn't sure everything he said, but I remember part of it was forgive him of his sins. And I just remember I was weeping, sobbing like crazy for probably a good 5 minutes at least, if not 5 to 10 minutes. And I felt like something broke, changed in me. And he said, "You're saved, bro." And I'm like, no, I didn't even know what had happened, and I wasn't even sure he understood correctly. So I said that, and he was like, yeah, you are. And so I guess the test of that, because for me, I had some kind of similar experience to that. It was actually in a Mormon church, but the test of it for me was this gonna last? Was I gonna feel something was new, something was changed in my life? And So, you know, I called my mom. I told her what had happened that night, and then just went to sleep thinking, okay, I don't know what tomorrow's going to be like, but I woke up the next day and it was like everything was still different. Like, I felt like, and I wrote about this somewhere. I remember pointing some things out. Like, now I see, you know, everything in like wildlife and humanity as God's creation, not just things that exist. And I actually wanted to be involved in, you know, church, learn about the Bible, and get to know God. And those were all things that just changed in me after that event that I experienced that night. So there's definitely more to the story, and I can get into that later, but that's just my testimony of the moment and the season where I got saved.